So today we are taking a look at the hearing that was held in Congress yesterday, all about UFOs or UAPs, with individuals bringing forth testimony and evidence of there being unidentified aircraft, as well as the claim that there are actual alien bodies and extraterrestrials here. So it's extremely interesting, but there is something that I believe a lot of people have missed that I think is key and critical, and that is the fact of interdimensional entities and that this reality is holographic. And this is mentioned in the video, and I think a few people, or I think a lot of people have missed this. So what are we going to do today? Today we're going to be taking a look at what I believe are some of the highlights of this hearing, and that I think are extremely important for people to hear and for people to know. Now, that being said, the main thing that I want to talk about is the interdimensional entities and holographic reality, but we're going to get to that a little later, because at first I just want to give, some people don't know what's going on here, and a lot of people have just seen little clips here and there, so I want to show you what I believe are some of the most important and critical aspects of this hearing. Now, going into this, I always want to remind you guys that we have to be open-minded and skeptical at the same time. We don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know for sure that there are aliens here. We can't say that for sure. But what we do know is that 3 highly credible, high-ranking individuals are coming forward under oath with testimony of some extremely intriguing information, as well as discussing video recorded evidence of one of these craft as well. So while we can't say for sure that there are aliens here right now, this is information that needs to be seriously considered and seriously looked at and investigated, because the evidence is pertinent, important. Now, I want to remind you all that if you haven't been coming to our live streams on Monday, in a very synchronistic way, we've actually been talking about interdimensional entities. We've been studying the Law of One, which is a channeled message from an interdimensional entity. And last week we were talking about negative entities known as the Orion Group that are interested in enslaving humanity. Now, we actually stopped right as it was about to get into a description of their craft, which is very synchronistic to what is being discussed right now. So we're going to talk about that on Monday. Long story short, if you're interested in this sort of thing, interdimensional entities and these craft and whatnot, and how it might relate to what's going on, make sure you are here this coming Monday for the stream on that. So that's going to be very interesting. So let's just get started here. There's some really, really great things to look at. Just if you're new, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Check out my work. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Morgue, and I'm a founder of a system known as the Neogenian, called The New Beginning, which is about creating a new humanity, a new earth through a new consciousness. And I've spent my life studying hidden knowledge, and I think it's about time that people know about it, and I like to bring people's awareness to that information, which I think can expand consciousness. Now, while we don't know if what's occurring right now is actually true or not, it is something that we need to be discussing, because whether what's being discussed or not is true or not, interdimensional entities are a thing that exist, and this is a holographic reality. Depending on how it defines it, we define it. Well, we'll get to that. I'll be explaining how we understand reality to be holographic. I've done so many videos on this on my channel, so let's just get right into it. If you haven't seen my video as well on the CIA declassified document that discusses reality being holographic and encountering energetic entities and whatnot, you can check out that video as well. But let's get right into it here. So make sure that everyone is able to see. In case anyone is not familiar, let me just give a quick, brief rundown of what this is. A former military intelligence officer turned whistleblower told House lawmakers that Congress is being kept in the dark about unidentified anomalous phenomena, known as UAPs or UFOs. So some people want to know what the difference is between UFO and UAP. Yeah, UFO is unidentified flying object. UAP is unidentified anomalous phenomena. So what is the difference? Two important differences. One is simply to remove the stigma. If someone is going to talk about a UFO or report a UFO or discuss UFOs, There's a stigma around that. UAPs doesn't have that stigma, so it helps decrease the stigma and allows it to be discussed in a way that doesn't automatically come with ridicule or all the baggage that comes with that. Another thing is that unidentified anomalous phenomena is wider. It's not just related to flying objects, but just anomalous phenomena in general. So that could be under the sea, for example. Doesn't have to necessarily be flying. So he alleges that executive branch agencies have withheld information about the mysterious objects for years. David Grusch, who served 14 years as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, appeared before the House Oversight Committee alongside 2 former fighter pilots who had firsthand experience with UAPs. So this is what I'm talking about here. This is some high-ranking individuals, credible individuals. You have David Grusch, who served 14 years as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and now 2 former fighter pilots who had firsthand experience with encountering these UAPs or UFOs. So let's see. I think that that's pretty good of an introduction for those who might not be familiar. If you want to know more about it, you can. But let's start taking a look at some of this video because there's a lot to go through. So the first thing that I want to take a look at with you guys is the actual footage, because this is discussed a lot. So when it comes up, I want you guys to know what is being discussed. So this is known as the Tic Tac video. And the reason why it's called Tic Tac is because the shape of the unidentified anomalous phenomena, the UAP or the UFO, the shape of it resembles a Tic Tac. It is of that shape. So this is called the Tic Tac video. And this is video that was captured by one of the fighter pilots that is giving testimony. I don't know if the one who is giving testimony is the one who got this footage or not, but this is the encounter that is being discussed. So let's just take a look at this, and then we'll get into the main video. But I want you to see this so that you know what is being referenced. And this is very short. It's only about 2 minutes long. So you can see that they're zooming into this object, which appears to be stationary. And you can see that it's a Tic Tac shaped, which is why it's called the Tic Tac video. And I know that probably some of you are familiar with this, but I know that a lot of people aren't as well. So I just want to have some background information as we actually get into this, because this video is going to be referenced quite a lot. So here we have them, I think, zooming in onto the object, which I believe is stationary at the moment. I'm no expert, though. I don't know for sure, but that's what it seems. And then now you can see it starts to move.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
So there's a whole fleet of them.
Gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS, though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
So the reason why this video is interesting is because its motion and speed seem to defy the laws of physics.
Echo 6-1 Tango Project, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get... Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
And that's the end. So again, just to reiterate, the reason why this is such an interesting video and causing such a stir is because its movements and speed seem to defy the laws of how science understands materialist physics. And that's going to be mentioned in the video. But now with that understood, let's start to get into this. And so this here is, I believe, one of the pilots that encountered the Tic Tac, as it's called.
You saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential thermal scans from your aircraft?
No, there's none. There's no IR plume coming out, and Chad, who took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visible signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal exhaust?
No.
Can you describe how the aircraft maneuvered?
Abruptly, very determinate. It knew exactly what it was doing. It was aware of our presence, and it had acceleration rates. I mean, it went from 0 to matching our speed in no time at all.
Now, if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do these maneuvers that you saw, would it be capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
Now, I think these are the important things to really pay attention here is that, because I think a lot of people will go, oh, how do you know it's just not an advanced craft? Maybe it's some like advanced craft that we don't know about from another country or something like this. But I think it's important to realize that coming from this fighter pilot, he's basically saying that this isn't something that's just a little more advanced. It is something that is beyond his capability to even fathom how something could be possible like this.
And just to confirm, this object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Now, was the aircraft that you were flying, was it armed?
No, never felt threatened at all.
If the aircraft was armed, do you believe that your aircraft or any aircraft in possession of the United States could have shot the Tic Tac down?
I'd say no. Just on the performance, it would have just left in a split second.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
In your belief, is this flying Tic Tac, I mean, is it capable of being the product of any other nation on the Earth?
No, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists have done calculations, which is beyond anything that we have.
Again, very important, because I see a lot of people going back to, oh, well, maybe it's just like from another country and it's highly advanced. But from what this individual is saying is that it's beyond anything that could possibly be created, even with, the most advanced technology, or even thinking that, granted that it could be highly advanced or things that we don't have ourselves yet. It's beyond that sort of thing. He's essentially, it's beyond. His opinion is that it's beyond the laws of how materialist science understand physics to operate.
Well, either the United States has an adversary here in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, it's been said it's probably the most credible UFO sighting in history based on all the sensors that were tracking it, and then for us to get visual and to go against the naysayers that it's something on the screen or whatever. I mean, there's 4 sets of human eyeballs. We're all very credible. Of the 6 of us that were involved in the thing, including the video, every one of us is going to do 20 plus years in the military in very responsible positions. So I'd say the world needs to know that.
And I think that that's a really great point. Like I said, I'm very skeptical, and I'm still not convinced yet. I remain skeptical, but I have an open mind. And he's absolutely right. One of the things that really differentiates this is not just the footage captured, but the sources that it comes from and the way in which it was captured, the technology that captured it, etc.
It's not a joke.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today for all of you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ogles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's take a look at another clip. There's just so much that is interesting about this, but I want to show you the what I consider to be some of the highlights here, and the most need to know.
Craft. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet in a controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip.
And yeah, in case you missed that, they said that according to the testimony of David Grusch, there is a program for recovering these craft, and some of them come with non-human bodies. That is his claim.
Was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in the large blue ocean. All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down a saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac.
Now, also, I just want to mention real quick, because I think a lot of people miss this as well. What he's describing is, again, something that's tic-tac shaped, but it's has no windows, it's seamless, it's not like it has wings, it's not like it's giving off exhaust or anything like that. It's just a seamless tic-tac shaped, large seamless tic-tac shaped object that is able to maneuver in such a way that, according to him, defies the laws of materialist physics, or as science understands them anyway.
We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees. We went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute."
Now you can see how crazy that is. It apparently disappeared, and they got a call that it was had appeared 60 miles away in less than a minute.
Calculate the speed.
What steps do you think have to be taken to improve a pilot's UAP reporting, be it military or commercial?
Right now, we need a system where pilots can report without fear of losing their jobs. There is a fear that the stigma associated with this topic is going to lead to professional repercussions, either through management or perhaps through their yearly physical check. So having a secure system, reducing the stigma, and making this information available through the public is going to reduce the concerns that aircrew have.
Mr. Grusch, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General, and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
How do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's zero airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Yeah, so once again, they're describing how it violates how they understand aircraft to operate. It's an object that can just be absolutely, completely, totally stationary, even during hurricane, and just accelerate incredibly quickly. And well, here there's more that I want to say, especially with regard to interdimensional entities, as well as the holographic reality that like I said, I think a lot of people are missing here. And I think one thing that I'm going to point out that I think a lot of people missed is that David Grusch refers to these beings not as extraterrestrials or aliens or anything like that, but non-human intelligences. And later on, what I'm going to show you is that he gets asked about this, and he explains that it's because he doesn't want to make an assessment as to what these things are or could be, and leave room open for possibilities, such as I would surmise interdimensional entities, because he mentioned those in another point, which I'll be showing you all in a moment.
What astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac, very briefly?
The performance. Absolute performance. It was.
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has, in this world, that has those capabilities?
No, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.
So, very interesting. And let's see. Okay, so there's this clip. Let's see. Let me just see which one that I want to show first here. Let's take a look at this one before we get into the holographic principle.
Grusch, thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisal?
Just real quick, for a little humor, this guy's funny. Let me see if he talks a little bit about TikTok, I think. Let me see. Hold on.
Thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. The others forms of
I think it's far beyond
any other object. So, as she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life.
Wait, where is it?
Miracle that we're having this, the candy. You're gonna have Chinese coming TikTok.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Mr. Favor, I noticed that in the Tic Tac video, it's Tic Tac like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese communist app.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my daughter corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer," and I said, "No, baby, it's Tic Tac like the candy. You're gonna have to just look it up." And but now I would also like to say today is a day of many firsts. It's
By the way, my TikTok account is back. By the way, for those who don't know, my account was banned on TikTok. It's back. It is back. So if you don't follow me on TikTok, go follow me. It's MorgueOfficial. I have a lot of shorts relating to hidden knowledge, hidden information that's important for you to see. Like I said, my mission is to get information that's important for the public to see, hidden knowledge out there, so we can raise consciousness and create a new beginning, a new humanity, and a new earth. Anyway, go follow my TikTok if you haven't. It's back now. I'm not banned. TikTok messaged me and said, "Oh, oops, we made a mistake." Yeah, I know. Anyway, let's continue.
Miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I want to tell my wife happy anniversary and that I love her very much.
No.
As she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life. So, thank you. Mr. Favor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac, very briefly?
I think we heard this part, yeah?
The performance.
Yeah, we did. Let's...
Absolute performance. It was.
Objects that anybody in the world has in those capabilities.
And actually our material science.
Here we go. This is where we left off in the other clip. So I just wanted to continue from there because there's more interesting information.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers, maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Grusch, thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate, as they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in
And that's kind of telling, because if he wasn't aware of that, he would probably just say no, not that I can't talk about it. So that's, in my opinion, seems pretty telling.
If we could get in a confidential area, SCIF, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the SCIF, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario. Mr. Favor, do you believe that you witnessed an additional object under the water in relation to your encounter?
I will say we did not see an object. There was something there to cause the whitewater, and when we turned around, it was gone. So there was something there that obviously moved.
Okay, it was not the same object though that you were looking at, correct?
No, we actually joked that the Tic Tac was communicating with something when we came back.
So he's basically saying that he thinks that there's a possibility that there was also something under the water, that perhaps another craft, perhaps, or who knows what. But he's saying that that's a possibility.
And because the whitewater disappeared.
We were, in another instance, we're told about the capabilities of a jamming during viewing of when there were some people chasing some of these objects. Did you experience any of that jamming or interrupting your radar or weapons system?
My crew that launched after we landed experienced significant jamming to the APG-73 radar, which was what we had on board, which is a mechanically scanned, very high-end system prior to the APG-79. And yes, it did pretty much everything you could do: range, velocity, aspect, and then it spit the lock, and the targeting pod is passive. That's what we were able to get the video on.
I'm about to run out of time, but are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No.
Okay.
So essentially, I think he was saying that the radar was jammed, as far as I know, that the radar was jammed and that our enemies don't have that kind of capability.
Would also like to note for the record that, like George Knapp, breaking Area 51, he's the reason I knew about that, and the reason I know about.
Okay, let's see.
Gentlemen, let's talk about the laws of physics.
Okay, now here's where. All right, let me see if this is. Okay, this isn't yet where we start talking about the holographic principle, or things like that. But this is where I like these individuals who start not that I like them as people, but I like that they're asking more technical questions about the laws of physics and things of that nature. So let's start going in that direction a bit, because I feel that is important.
For a second. Mr. Graves and Commander Favor, I heard you talk about speed.
By the way, I think this guy in the background, this is a serious topic, but if you watch the faces and the expressions of the audience members or the people in the background, or just the people part of it, some of them are pretty funny. Let's continue.
Those objects broke the sound barrier. Did they make a sonic boom?
I was in a jet. You can't hear anything. It's kind of loud in there.
Yeah, you're not able to actually personally tell within the vehicle. I will say the objects that we were seeing, they were spherical, and they were observed up to Mach 2, which is a very non-aerodynamic shape.
By the way, this guy, Mr. Graves, I believe he described something that he encountered that was different. That was not the Tic Tac. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that he describes an object that he encountered as being a transparent spherical object with a black cube inside of it. I'm pretty sure that's what he described it as, which is interesting. Transparent spherical object with a black cube. I'm fairly certain that's what he had described it as.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human survive those G-forces with known technology today?
No.
No, not for the acceleration rates that we observed.
Yeah, see, again, with how fast they viewed it as accelerating, the technology that we know of today, a human would not be able to survive the G-forces associated with that kind of acceleration.
Okay. What about what they look like? How close did you get? Did you?
And once again, I want to say too, for those watching and whatnot, it's important to be open-minded and also skeptical. So for me personally, I'm not 100% convinced by this, but I think that it is very good evidence that needs to be investigated closely, right? Like, this is the thing, because throughout my work and my life, studying hidden knowledge, studying occult groups, studying secret societies, studying all kinds of strange information, things that may or may not be true, where there is a lot of deception involved, you have to always be very open-minded, but also very skeptical at the same time, and be able to weigh what is obviously bullshit, what is 100% real for sure, and what has enough evidence behind it that it shows that it should be given attention and investigated. And so information like this is not, 100% sure we know this is true, but it is very good evidence that says, okay, we need to take this seriously. This isn't some blurry phone, blurry video taken on a camera, iPhone at night by someone who was dropping LSD. These are highly credible individuals, sophisticated recording systems that was tracking all kinds of data. And so this definitely says, hey, this is something we need to look into and take seriously and investigate.
Did you see a seam or a rivet or a section? And what I mean is, obviously, the jets you're flying have all those things. Did these objects have those?
Do you want to go, Ryan?
I didn't have the detail to be able to tell that.
So we got within a half mile of Tic Tac, which people say that's pretty far, but in airplanes, that's actually relatively close. No, it was perfectly white, smooth, no windows, although when we did take the original FLIR video that is out there, when you put it on a big screen, it actually had two little objects that came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Mr. Grusch, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grusch, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight,
Hey, Athox, real quick, thank you for gifting a membership.
what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I would call it abuse here. So congressional oversight of conventional special access programs, so I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119 discusses congressional oversight of SAPs, discusses the DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a waived or waive bigoted unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I don't want to cut you off, but how does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but misappropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD.
Okay. Satellite imagery. Let's talk about satellite imagery. We have satellites all over the place, some that we're...
Okay, real quick. We'll come back to this guy and talking about satellite imagery. But before we do, let's talk a little more about this idea now of interdimensional entities and the holographic reality. So let me see. I think this is, no, this is not it. Let me see if this is.
And then in terms of multidimensionalities,
Oh, hold on. Yeah, this is what we need to talk about here.
I witnessed myself.
Okay, and so with that being said, you know, the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system, and the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Okay, so here's some things that's really important here and really starts to hit at the heart of the issue and things that think people need to take seriously. We're going to hear his answer in just a second. But first of all, what this guy is basically saying is, okay, if these aliens are billions of light years away and they somehow have advanced enough technology to get here, it seems kind of far-fetched that they would be incompetent enough to crash these. But the other thing and then he talks about an interdimensional potentiality, which he wants to get that clarified. Now, that's a very good point, but also what I want to point out here is that for if these creatures or entities are billions of light years away, and this has always been my position. So my position has always been that is it possible for there to be physical aliens right here, right now? Yeah, it is possible, but I am more likely to think in terms of interdimensional entities. And the reason why is because of that vast distance. So for something to be billions of light years away, traveling in a localized way from point A to B would seem to be impossible. However, if we're talking about beings that aren't associated with this dimension, then they don't exist within the confines of space and time. And if they're not existing within this confines of space and time, then they can have communications directly. And this is what when on Mondays we've been studying the law of one, the raw material. And the raw material is basically about an entity that is an interdimensional entity that doesn't exist in this dimension, an interdimensional entity that is a group mind, which calls itself a social memory complex, that is basically, you could say, like telepathically communicating. There's a channeler who channels this entity. So there's a couple things to think about here in that there's different levels of beings. There's a level of being that we are at and humanity is at, and there are physical entities, physical aliens, physical extraterrestrials that are around the same level that we are and possibly have better technology than us. And then we start talking about entities that are just beyond corporeal form. Now, in our system, in the Neogenian, we call these subnetwork minds that have achieved holos independence, meaning that they are a group of minds or a configuration of zetas, zetic minds, that are systems of frequencies that no longer require physical bodies. And we call the so-called physical universe, which is actually an internal hologram, the holos. has achieved holos independence and is no longer associated with the planetary sphere that they were originally associated with. In that sense, planets are like seeds. Planets are like seeds that eventually develop avatars that have the capability for self-awareness, then evolve to all awareness and hyper awareness, which is where we're trying to get humanity right now, to hyper awareness and establish a planetary civilization. They eventually establish a planetary civilization. Then they begin to form a group or collective consciousness, which is an even higher level of awareness. And then eventually that collective consciousness becomes so synchronized that they no longer are even required to be associated with physical forms anymore. And they, in essence, create their own dimension, or what we call a CFD, a collective frequency domain, which they are then able to reside. And then there's a whole nother level there. And at that point, entities are likely very interested in our, or other species, evolution as a collective. And they're going to be interested in our evolution. And so then you have entities that are kind of would be interested in us as a collective getting on their wavelength, so to speak. So they, in the Law of One, they describe negative entities known as the Orion Group that are trying to get humanity on their wavelength, so to speak, by disseminating very negative philosophy. And then there is other groups that are more interested in us understanding our interconnectedness and realizing that we are all one, and that reality is an illusion, and that we can evolve and grow and synchronize together. Now, again, we don't know if the Law of One is real or not. It could all be made up. But regardless, it matches a lot of what we know to be true about reality in our system. So it's an interesting thing to study. We don't know 100% if it's true or not, but we know how reality operates. We know that it operates on frequencies. We know that reality is ultimately an internal holographic illusion generated by the projection of these frequencies, and that in this system, in this theoretical framework that we work in, there is the possibility of subnetwork minds, or a collective of minds forming higher minds that are then would be interested in the evolution of planets. So I think it's important to sort of differentiate between interdimensional higher entities and then what people would typically think of as aliens that actually have corporeal forms, that are actually still there's just a considerable difference, and it's important to understand that difference, because it will also be important to understand what the intentions of these beings are. So my position is that I absolutely believe that physical aliens exist. Do they exist on this planet? That remains to be seen. I think it would be very difficult for them to get here. So it's open. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would be very, very difficult. And the reason why it would be very difficult would be based on energy consumption and something known as asymptotic burnout, which I've discussed in another video, but I don't have enough time to get into it right now. But as far as interdimensional beings go, interdimensional beings would have a lot more opportunity to perhaps make contact with Earth via channeling. There's a couple different ways they could do it. Either via channeling, being open to individuals who are trying to contact them through mind and disseminating information that way, as well as incarnation. They are eternal minds, beings of frequencies, zetas, so they could literally incarnate, meaning they would be born. The risk of being born and incarnating is that it wipes your memory, because that's the function of the brain, is to limit one's mind to its current incarnation and what's around it to be able to give it a good chance of survival. So incarnation is kind of a risky thing, because your memory gets wiped eventually. But then there is the possibility, could they interact in some other way? And I think that is something to consider, because in my position, they can interact via the mind, they can interact via incarnating. Can they interact in another way? Is it possible for another type of interaction? We'll see. And I think that this is why things like this are important. We don't know if they're true. but it's coming from credible sources with good evidence. And so it's very much worth investigating to see if it can expand on how we know reality and certain entities may or may not operate. So anyway, let's continue here. This individual just asked, here, I'll just, in case I rambled on a little bit, so let's just.
Was very disturbing.
Okay.
Wait, what was very disturbing?
I can't get into the specifics.
Hold on, I don't know what, let me see what that previous question was, because that sounded interesting.
I know of
with that being said, there's been a lot of things that have been said in the public, Mr. Grusch, and so I want to get down to, if we can, some specifics, right? So at one point you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured, and the activity. And I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
Both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed, myself and my wife, was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question, and I figured I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has
Real quick, I see some people in the chat. I'm glancing at the chat every now and then, but not a lot. I see a lot of people in the chat like being frustrated, like, oh, that's so vague. Well, you have to understand that, first of all, he's trying to be careful for his physical safety and legal safety, because this has to do with confidential, classified information, as well as, his physical safety as well. So basically what he's been saying throughout is that all this information I will tell it to you, but not in a public setting. So it's not like he's saying, oh, I know things, but I'm never going to tell you. He's saying, I will tell you, but not in this public setting. Like, we have to set something up that's confidential, and then I'll tell you what I know. So yeah, a lot of this is vague, but I think, he's trying to say as much as he can. But this is where, what this shows is, okay, there's enough here that we need to look into this further. So what the next step needs to be is to get him and these individuals, mostly him, I think, in a meeting where he can divulge this information, and then Congress can see, like, all right, is this, what places do we need to investigate? What areas do we need to go to? Who do we need to talk to, etc. So I understand the frustration, but it is logical for him to have to be careful. And frankly, I think it's pretty incredible that this is something that's being televised. Very interesting.
Alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
See, so you notice, so he says he hasn't seen any bodies, right? So so according to him, he hasn't actually seen any aliens. This is the bodies are coming from, I think, reports that he's read, people he's interviewed, etc. But you'll notice when they asked him, have you seen any of the craft? He said, I have to be really careful what I say. I'll tell you in closed doors. If they said, have you seen any bodies? And he just said, no, I haven't. So it seems pretty clear that if the answer is no, he just says it. If it's yes or more complicated than that, then he says that he can't say anything. So I think he's trying to say as much as he possibly can.
Okay, and so with that being said, and the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years.
And I just want to reiterate again, I know I keep pausing here, but again, I don't think people appreciate how far billions of light years away is. That is just. This is why it would seem to start crossing over from just physical entities into higher dimensional beings to be able to have contact in a certain way like that. I mean, a light year is the distance light travels in a year, and light speed is the fastest speed you can possibly go. You can't go faster than that. So at that point, you're at the point of being able to do this, you are now having to manipulate the non-local aspect of reality. Basically what that means is, okay, from how we know reality works, it would seem impossible for an alien or extraterrestrial, whatever you want to call them, to get from point A to point B to where we are by traveling directly. For this to occur, now you're talking about manipulating the non-local aspect of reality. So to put that in easier to understand terms, instead of interacting in the video game world, you're at the level where you're manipulating or you're working with the code of existence. You're working with how the code operates. Yeah. So anyway, really, really interesting. Like I said, if this stuff interests you, check out the live stream we're going to do on Monday about the Law of One, where it starts talking about the Orion craft, because it starts to describe how they are actually operated via thought and can be. And anyway, it's very, very interesting and goes along with this interesting information.
Gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring?
Only a theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so here, this is very important. So what he's talking about here is he said that he's heard this, discussed in theory and in theoretical about, he doesn't know that that's what these things are or what's going on. He's heard it discussed in theory. But this is very interesting. So he's bringing up the holographic principle. And so the holographic principle is a principle that physicist Leonard Susskind is really known for and brought to the forefront of physics. And it has to do with the physics of, like he said, general relativity, quantum mechanics, and holograms and black holes. So so there's two different things going on here. There's something known as the holographic universe theory, right? The holographic universe. And then there is the holographic principle. Now, these are different things, but they are very similar. Now, the way we look at reality is in our system, the Neogenian system, and our system of meta-rationalism, is that reality is an internal hologram. So there's the holographic theory, there's the holographic principle, and then there is our system, the Neogenian system, which incorporates these ideas. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So basically, what the holographic principle is, or I'm sorry, not the holographic theory is basically the universe is a hologram, that it's not physical, that it is a hologram, and exhibits the properties that a hologram does, that it's non-physical. Now, what the holographic principle is promoted by a physicist known as Leonard Susskind. And now I want to make it clear, the holographic principle is not like fringe science. It's a principle in physics, and it's very well respected. Leonard Susskind is a highly respected physicist, like on par with Stephen Hawking. He wrote a book called The Black Hole Wars because he was in an argument with Stephen Hawking about a certain way that black holes worked. And I don't recall, but I think that it turned out that Susskind was right and that Hawking was wrong. Don't quote me on that. I don't know that for sure, but I think that it turned out that Susskind was right and Hawking was wrong. But anyway, Susskind is like on par with Stephen Hawking, just to put it out there. He's not some fringe scientist. He's not some, loon or anything like that. He's a very well-established physicist. And so he promotes the holographic principle, which essentially says that reality is a 3D hologram that is projected from the surface of a black hole. So essentially what Leonard Susskind says is, hey, what are black holes? Black holes are the surface which projects the hologram that we experience. So, in other words, what that means is that reality is holographic information, and everything that's going on right now, according to the holographic principle, everything that's going on right now is encoded as information on the surface of a black hole. So it's the surface of a black hole, and where the information is encoded. So let me give you an example to try and make that, because there's a lot that I want to say about this, and this is really important. This is important stuff here. So let's understand a hologram real quick. So let's say that this is a laser, okay? So this is a laser, and now let's say this is a holographic plate. Now, what is a holographic plate? It's just film, like camera film, but special film. It's just film that has information encoded on it, and this information is wave information. It's an interference pattern, okay? So that's also important to know, all right? So keep that in mind. But anyway, we have this holographic plate. We have this source beam, which you can think of as a laser. So when you shine the source beam on the holographic plate, if you look at it, what you'll then get is a three-dimensional image. Okay? So you kind of have three components here. You have the source beam, you have the holographic plate, and then you have the holographic image. When the source illuminates the plate, which is a wave interference pattern, it creates that holographic image. Now, you could imagine that hologram, all the information of the hologram is contained on the holographic plate. So if you were to change information on that plate, of course, information in the hologram would change, because the hologram is just made up of the information that's being projected from that plate. So in a nutshell, kind of what the holographic principle is saying is that the surface of a black hole is kind of like that holographic plate. And then we are the hologram. So our information is encoded on the surface of a black hole as two-dimensional information. And so you can kind of see how, if you were to have a piece of film, it's not exactly two-dimensional because there's a little bit of width, but you can imagine it's a bit like something that's two-dimensional. It's flat. The hologram is three-dimensional, but this flat thing gives rise to a dimensional thing, a 2D thing. It's not exactly 2D, but if you're imagining it, gives rise to this 3D thing. So the holographic principle, as per Leonard Susskind, is essentially that we are in this hologram that is being projected from the surface of a black hole, and that's essentially what black holes are. Very, very, very interesting. Now, this fits in really nicely with just the holographic theory in general. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our system and why this is important and how this fits in with interdimensional entities, because in our system, it fits in very well with all this as well as interdimensional entities. So in our system, reality is ultimately mind. Reality is ultimately mind, and mind is defined as frequency. So what is reality? So in our system, meta-rationalism, reality is frequency, and this means that it is mind, light, and mathematical, because all these concepts are the same. So you have frequency, which is mind. Frequency is a mathematical concept, so it's reality. So since reality is frequency, reality is mathematical because frequency is a mathematical concept. Frequency is mind, and frequency is also light. So what is reality? It's mathematical. It's frequency. It's mind, and it's light. Now, this fits in very, very nicely with understanding existence as being an internal mental hologram. It's a internally projected mental hologram. So you have the and see, this fits in really nicely because now, what is the source, right? So in our system, reality fundamentally is mind, fundamentally is light, fundamentally is frequency. So this frequency is what would be the what would stand in for the laser, the source, and we literally call it the source. The laser is the source. In our system, this system of frequency is the source. Now, this is defined as per an equation known as the source formula, and the source formula is a perfect circle that generates sinusoidal waves, particularly sine and cosine waves. Now, here's why this is important. So what does this mean? It means at base, reality is formed by sine and cosine waves. Sine and cosine waves are the most basic kind of waves that you can possibly get. They are the basic building blocks of reality. When you combine sine and cosine waves together, you can generate an interference pattern, and you can generate a wave structure that is as complicated as you can possibly imagine. So basically what this means, these basic waves can be combined to create any wave structure imaginable. So essentially what this means is that what you can do is you can have these waves form more complex structures. Now, here's the important part. What waves are capable of doing is expressing their information in a different way. Now, this gets into where he's sort of talking about a shadow projected. It's not exactly the same, but it's in the way that in the context he's talking about it, but it's very, very similar. So this is known as a projection. What frequencies can do is be projected as another kind of information, such as space and time information. So this is known as a Fourier transform. Now, Fourier transform, they're used everywhere. They're used in optics, they're used in image processing, they're used in like Wi-Fi connections. Fourier transforms are everywhere. It's in music. And it's basically the idea that you can take frequencies and project those frequencies as another kind of information, like space and time information. Okay, so here's how it all works together. You have just base reality, which is pure frequency and the pure source. And you can think of that as sort of like the laser. Now, these frequencies can be arranged into other patterns, frequency functions. These frequency functions are essentially interference patterns, and they serve as the plate. Now, since since frequency functions can be represented as space and time functions, also known as a projection, it means they can be projected as space and time information, aka a hologram. So that means, what this means is, you see, when you're working with physical holograms, you have like these different components. Like here's the laser, here's the holographic plate, then here's the hologram. In this system, it's all self-contained. You have the source, which are the building blocks of reality, the sine and cosine waves, which themselves can be arranged into other patterns, which are frequency functions, which form the interference pattern, which mathematically speaking can be projected and represented as space and time information. So what this means is you don't need like all these separate parts. It's kind of like, you can kind of think of it as being collapsible or expandable. It's all self-contained. The source generates its own interference pattern, which projects its own hologram. Now, this is not an external hologram. It's not out there. It's internal, because remember, everything is mind. So this projection of space and time information seems physical, but it's not. It's because we're experiencing it as individuals in bodies that are feeding us space and time information. What we truly are what we call zetas. Zetas are minds. They are collections of frequencies. So we are actually the source. That's what we are. We are a collection of minds and beings of frequencies. And so we are containers of what's called Fourier basis waves. So you can imagine it's sort of like each and every one of us is a laser itself. And each and every one of us can project our own frequency information. So what does that mean? How do you understand that? You do that every time you go to sleep at night in dream. So when you go to sleep at night in dream and you are in your dream world, what you are doing is that you are a zetic mind. You're not a body. You're not an avatar. You're a zeta that's linked to this body. When you go to sleep in dream, you as a zeta are tuning into a different pattern. So this is what we call tuning. Humans have a binary tuning capability. They can tune into the collective holos, or they can tune into their own dream world. So what happens is that you tune, when you go to sleep and dream at night, you're tuning into your own pattern and you're experiencing its internal projection. So when you're exploring your dream world, you're exploring the space-time projection of your frequency functions. In other words, your dream world is a space-time representation of your mind and your unconscious. So you're exploring the projected contents of your mind as an internal holographic projection. Remember, it's not a projection out there, it's an internal projection. And it's not anywhere. You're tuning into it, just like you can tune into different radio stations by adjusting the frequency and the band. And like you can change television channels. People don't really change channels anymore. It's like selecting a different show, whatever. You're tuning into one show instead of another show. You're tuning into, instead of the show that everyone else is tuned into. I think that's a good way to experience. You can tune into the show that everyone else is tuned into, or you can tune into your own personal show. When you go and sleep and dream at night, you're tuning into your own personal show, the show that is made up of your frequencies. When you're awake, you've switched, and now you're tuning into the collective show, the show that everyone else is tuned into. That's why everyone agrees on what's going on, because it's the collective that everyone else is tuned into. If you think of it like a video game, it's single player versus multiplayer. Single player, it's your dream world, you're tuned into it, no one else is there. Multiplayer, you're tuned into the universal server that everyone else is tuned into and is interacting in. So this world, the difference between a dream world and the world that we exist in right now is that this world that we exist in right now is composed of all our collective frequencies together. So all our collective frequencies together compose this dream world. And that's why we can't change something just by thinking about it, like we can in a dream, because it's not just our frequencies to change. It's, many minds in existence, all zetic minds in existence are contributing to the frequency components of what we call the holos, physical reality. So you can't change it just by thinking about it because it's not yours to change. That's why in a dream, things change all the time. Things change really rapidly because it's all based on your mind, your feelings, etc. When you add all the minds in existence into the mix, that's why change happens very slowly. It takes billions and billions of years because it's not any one mind to control. And then we have to develop avatars that are better at manipulating the physical world, etc. And so what happened essentially is that we are eternal minds, Zedic minds. Okay, at the beginning of space-time, before the Big Bang, we existed as a single unified mind. Now, we were all individual component zetas, but we form a configuration, we can form a network. So that's important to understand. Reality is a single mind, okay, that we call the absolute. We call this the absolute. By the way, I have another video series that I've done on the declassified CIA document that talks about the reality being holographic as well. That talks about the absolute and internal projections and a lot of what we're talking about right now. Now, it's not the same, and I always want to say we have to be skeptical of all this stuff, but I always like to point out similarities, and we can learn from it. You know, we can be skeptical, but still learn from these things. But anyway, I digress. Reality is a single mind, but it's a network of mind. It's a Zedic configuration. That's what reality is. A configuration of zetas that form a single network mind that we call the absolute, or the absolute network, or the absolute neural network. That's what we are. We are the absolute neural network that is formed by individual Zedic nodes, or zetas, which we are. So what happened was at the reality goes in cycles. So you go from Big Bang to reality completing itself, to Big Bang, to reality completing itself, to Big Bang again. So reality evolves in a cyclical pattern. So before the Big Bang, there wasn't nothing at all. It was a state of perfection, a state of pure mind. And that's what we are. We are one mind formed by a network. And essentially what occurred was before this Big Bang was the end of the series before us, the universal cycle before us. So what we decided to do as a mind is basically shatter ourselves, and this was the Big Bang. Now, why did we do this? Because at that point, it's essentially that we're God. And if you're God, it's very boring because you've done everything there is to do. You've thought everything there is to thought. You know everything. You know all possible things. There's not, it would be hell. And at that point too, we are a single mind because we're all so attuned in one wavelength, or on the same wavelength, so to speak, that we are one. Even though we're a multiplicity, we're so in tune that we are one. And so that would also be eternal loneliness as well. That state of being one is a beautiful state and a wonderful state and a fantastic state, but it can't occur for eternity or it would turn into hell. So what do? We shatter ourselves to be able to experience ourselves in multiplicity again. We go from unity to multiplicity, and that is the Big Bang, where we vary our internal frequency functions so it no longer projects a delta, a Dirac delta, a singularity, but projects extension. And that is the Big Bang, which was kickstarted by us, not nothing at all. It wasn't a random quantum fluctuation. It wasn't the creation of God. It was us deciding to go from a state of perfect symmetry to a state of asymmetry to experience ourselves in multiplicity. And of course, what occurs as well is a mind wipe. Why? Because it wouldn't be satisfying. If you didn't wipe your mind, you would know that it was all just you would have that knowledge, and it would just be something that you already understand what's going. It wouldn't work unless you forgot what you were. So now we're on this process of evolution, and it takes billions and billions of years. Humanity is at the point where it got to self-awareness. Now what we're trying to do is get humanity to hyper-awareness. We realize that we're all interconnected, that we are all multiple viewpoints of a single unity, so we can establish a planetary civilization where humanity is united and connected. So the issue is here, now this comes into the idea of interdimensional beings. Well, what are interdimensional beings? Well, you can imagine that we are eternal minds. We are Zedic minds that have reached a certain stage of evolution. And once we begin, we then form a planetary civilization. And I'm going very, very fast. What I'm explaining right now would probably take like a 3-year course, okay? Which we'll have at some point. but I'm doing it in a nutshell because I think this is really important as to what is being discussed here. So we are trying to get humanity to form this planetary civilization. What happens when humanity forms a planetary civilization? We begin to act as a network. We're always still individuals, but we are able, imagine it like a bunch of computers that are all connected to the cloud. So those computers are all still individuals, but they also have a collective consciousness as well, the cloud, the one that they all share. And at that, and from that perspective, you can say that they are one network. They are individuals as a single network. They form a network. We form a network mind. We begin to become conscious of this. We become hyper-aware. We start to create hyper-aware technology. We develop the ability to tune. We become more and more in sync. Now we're at the fifth level. You could call it a fifth level of consciousness, depending on how you want to define it, where you are now at a level where you are so connected that you're starting to form that single consciousness, that network consciousness. Then eventually the stage beyond that is where we've become so synchronized that we no longer require physical avatars. We now enter into the phase of holos independence. And we establish what we call a CFD, or collective frequency domain, which is essentially us creating our own dimension. So we now have we have the ability, you know how we can tune into different domains. We can tune into this collective domain. We can tune into our own internal domain. We create our own domain that we all collectively tune to and create. And this will be formed by our own frequencies, so we can control it. Now, this isn't anywhere in space and time. It's not any location. It's a completely different domain. So that's important to understand. It's not like, oh, this part of the universe, we're creating it over here or over there or on this planet. No, it's a different domain, a different dimension. You can think of it as an entirely new universe, but it's our universe that we project internally. So we exist in that domain. So this is then where you start getting into the idea of interdimensional beings, beings that exist in their own domains that they have formed as a collective. No single mind forms their own domain. That's just your dream world. Collective domains. So you have these collective domains where a certain species has evolved in unity and synchronicity to where they can establish these domains. So now you have these domains established by network minds, and there's a whole new level of reality. Now you have your own domain. Now you have network minds interacting with network minds. Now you have network minds that are interested in the evolution of planets like ours that haven't achieved that yet, either trying to help or hinder, possibly. And this is where we get to what we're talking about now, where the question is, if this is real, would this be a manifestation of interdimensional, highly evolved minds that are interested in our evolution? Or are we talking about something a step lower, beings that are still, more evolved than us, but haven't reached that level yet, and are just highly technologically advanced? That's where it gets a little murky with, would they be able to have the technology to even get here? Where an interdimensional being, it's a lot different. I think the difference is sort of like, let's say you have a colony of ants and they encounter a beetle. That's kind of like humans encountering some, highly advanced alien life form or something. This is more like ants encountering a human being. It's just a completely different level of consciousness. It's not about like, laser guns and that kind of thing. It's about another mode of being entirely, a completely different dimension, a completely different domain. And there's a bunch of different, very, very big questions that this opens up. There's a lot of accounts, for example, of people who have DMT experiences that may possibly be tuning into different domains, because those who do DMT experience different entities. And often these entities say, oh, we're really excited that you've developed the technology to get here. We want to show you things. We want to teach you things. Listen, we're trying to teach you. Like Terence McKenna is really known for this sort of thing. So this comports very nicely with that sort of thing. Now, do we know that for sure? No, but these are all interesting things to investigate. Now, remember, don't do anything dangerous or illegal. I always say that when talking about psychedelics, and don't ever feel pressured. You don't have to do these things. But this is where it's just, interesting. This is immediately what piqued my interest because whenever the topic of other entities comes up, I'm always thinking, all right, are we talking about little green men in spaceships here, or are we talking about holograms and the interdimensional entities? So the idea is that reality isn't just a hologram. I mean, it is, but not as typically understood. So it's important to understand that reality is a mental, inner-projected hologram. So it's mind, it's not anything physical, and it's projected internally from, derived as projections from frequency functions. Now, and it's all a mathematical reality, but it's not, it's a qualitative experience, living energy as well. So this is why some people have the intuition that reality is a dream, and other people have the intuition that reality is a simulation. The reason why is because it feels like a dream because it's an internal mental projection. And it feels like a simulation because reality runs on a kind of code. Reality is mathematical, and so it's very code-like in that nature. So that's why a lot of people have the intuition that reality is a simulation. It's not that it's actually a simulation, it's on a mathematical code. And people have the idea that reality feels like a dream. Well, that's because it is a kind of dream. It's a dream that is projected from the eternal frequency code of the source that generates this reality of which we are. So we are all reality. We are existence. We are the absolute, experiencing ourselves in our diversity, in our multiplicity. And this is why humanity needs to get its shit together. And this is why raising to the next level of consciousness, this is why in our system, the Neogenian, and we've been talking about meta-rationalism, which is an aspect of our system. So the Neogenian system, which means new beginning, by the way, because we are the new beginning and we want to create a new humanity through a new consciousness and a new earth. It's about getting humanity to the next level of consciousness, because when you get to the next level of consciousness, all war, all unnecessary conflict, all that stuff, it begins to just melt away. Because look, you're not going to hit your own hand with a hammer because you know it's your hand and you know that's stupid. Well, likewise, when you realize that we're all connected, you're not going to irrationally hurt another person because you know that you're just hurting yourself, because we exist in a network that is a feedback loop of itself. So the only way that humanity can save itself is through unity. Now, this unity can either be coerced, or like a slave-like reality can be created, or it can be done through harmony and synchronization and working together and creating a better world. So we want to create a teleocratic planetary civilization. Telos means purpose. We want to create a purposeful planet to increase the quality of life for every individual and the collective. Now, there are others who want this world to be more slave-like reality, and you can look to like the billionaire elite who want to rule the world. And this can create sort of like a forced unity, which is what we don't want. We want a unity where we're all working together in a transcendent state to help each other evolve, grow, and learn. And we want to make sure that everyone has the resources necessary to be able to do that, to be able to thrive, learn, grow, and evolve. So that's what we're all about, is shifting consciousness, because that shift in consciousness is necessary. It's required. You can't have a unified planetary civilization without it. You're just going to have people arguing about whose God is the best, or whose nation is the best, or who's superior to who. It's just a bunch of bullshit until you have a literal evolution in consciousness. And this is not just some airy-fairy new age woo-woo. It's about literally creating a new structure in the mind known as the analog all. The analog I, or the ego, is required for self-awareness. Developing the analog all is required for all awareness and hyper-awareness, and we have ways to do this. This involves concept networking, metacognition, and phenomenological experience to develop that structure in the psyche to achieve that state, to achieve that higher consciousness. Anyway, I went on quite a lot about this, but you can see why this becomes very, very interesting. Like I said, with stuff like this, we want to remain skeptical. We always want to be skeptical, but we want to be open-minded and as well. And the stuff that's being said is stuff that goes, okay, this requires this is good evidence. It's not proof, but it's good evidence. We need to take a closer look at this. We need to see what's going on here.
Okay. Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors? Is there any evidence that that's what's being recovered?
Not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting of. So,
would it be safe to say that there could be a scenario today where you have an aircraft that crashes and because it's been involved in one program from one federal agency, and but the agency that retrieves it is not aware of that program, and to them it appears alien in origin?
I mean, that's a hypothetical situation. I'm not aware of any historical situation that would match that you described. So
you're not aware, it has not happened that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Now, this information here, I want to point out it's important because it's important to see that Grusch, I can't remember if it's, I think it's Grusch, tries not to, as far as I know, tries not to refer to them as extraterrestrials or aliens, but non-human intelligence. And I think this is addressed in this clip here.
Mr. Grusch, why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be,
See, I really like his position there as well. See, he's saying that he calls them non-human intelligence to differentiate between, well, alien is traditionally understood, or something that we don't quite understand, something that's beyond, astrophysics, etc. And I think that that's, a really important point. And I like the things that he brings up about the holographic principle, about interdimensional possibility, and not committing, being open-minded to it being something other than how aliens are traditionally depicted in Hollywood films.
I sought a briefing regarding that episode and brought with me Congressman Burchett and Congresswoman Luna. We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down, he said that his FLIR system malfunctioned, and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection, as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about for craft?
And it's also interesting, you know, obviously this should be a point of interest, even if, like, let's, you know, from what they're saying is that from how they understand existence to operate and on our technological level, they're saying there's no way this could be a foreign government or anything like that. But let's say it were. I mean, this would still be something extremely pressing that needs to be looked into, because that would mean that you would have some sort of foreign power that has capabilities far beyond what is comprehensible in our understanding of technology.
Moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond. In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
Yeah, and this other point, that one of the points that they keep bringing up is that these pilots are ridiculed for bringing up stuff like this, and they can lose their jobs and you know, just totally have the loss of their career. And it's like, even if it's, you know, let's say it's not alien, it's not extraterrestrial, it's not otherworldly or anything, they should still be able to report it, because that would mean that there is some very technologically advanced technology out there that we don't know where it's coming from. And of course, that's a concern. It's a very big concern.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe.
Yeah, see, he's saying that you can't talk about this. You can't talk about this, or your career will be gone.
That perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grusch in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee.
And see, I don't know anything about this guy, but I like that. He's kind of like, hey, look, there's something. He's like, we need to take actionable steps. This is a problem. And we need to get more information about this. He's, you know, I think he's absolutely right.
Ms. Mays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our witnesses who are testifying today. I want to thank each of you for being here to discuss a topic of grave importance to our national security. Earlier this year, a Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the coast of my home state of South Carolina. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, Many Americans have wondered about the dangers of unknown objects crisscrossing our skies, whether these are UAPs or weather phenomena, advanced technology from American allied or enemy forces, or something more out of this world. So my first question, I have several questions, and if we can just be quick on these first two, I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll get to each of you individually. The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right. And then do you believe there's an active disinformation campaign within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves. What percentage of UAP sightings, in your belief, go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
Yes, isn't that crazy? From what I understand, he's saying is that 95% of UAP sightings go unreported. So only 5% of the experiences that people have are reported.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
That's a good point.
No, we have test ranges for that.
It's a really good point.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file. Never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grusch, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government, of the 5% that are reported?
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft.
See, again, he would just say no if the answer was no, like he has with the others.
Stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this?
So he's claiming that there are non-human bodies that have been recovered. But it's important to note that I believe he hasn't, he says that he hasn't directly seen these bodies, but that he has seen the reports, and I think, I don't know if he's interviewed people, but he says that he's seen the reports and maybe perhaps has interviewed people. When he was asked, has he seen the craft, the spacecraft, or whatever kind of craft you want to call it, he said, oh, that's something I have to say. I can't tell you, basically. I can only tell you behind closed doors. But when he said, did you see the body? When she asked that, he said, no. So it seems like that he has likely, according to him, seen some kind of craft, perhaps. I mean, he says he can't say, but he usually says no when it's no. It seems like anyway. But we don't know. But he says that he hasn't seen any bodies, but he's seen reports and maybe testimony. I don't know, but reports. So that's also important to understand. Like when examining this skeptically, it's secondhand information. He hasn't directly observed bodies. So that's important to know.
Documentary evidence is video, photos, eyewitness. Like how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
It's interesting. It's very, very interesting.
Now we have Mr. Langworthy's here. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for being here today to discuss this very unique topic. And I'd like to jump right in.
Can you imagine if it was just a joke? If David, what if his bosses were all like, David from Investigations, he was asking about what's going on there. Let's tell him we got a bunch of aliens. They're like, oh yeah, that'll be funny. Hey David, guess what? And now it's like this big thing, and they're all like, oh, well, we really fucked up. I don't think that's what happened, but that would be funny if it was. Anyway, let's continue. If I will say, if this is real and all legit, if it's legit, this guy's really brave. If it's, barring from it being some elaborate ridiculousness, this guy's extremely brave because he's risking his life. He's risking his career. He's risking pretty much everything. So, if it's legit, hats off to this guy for sure. He's if legit, he's certainly a monumentally historical individual.
My questions, if you don't mind. Commander Fravor, can you briefly describe your background?
Yeah, I was an enlisted Marine, Naval Academy graduate, Navy, flew for 18 years, got a master's from University of Houston, and I've worked in the private sector for the last, 16 years, 17 years. I do a lot of defense work. So
really gold-plated credentials. Commander Fravor, we have all seen the floating Tic Tac video that you engaged with on November 14th, 2004. Can you briefly talk about why you were off the coast of San Diego that day?
Yeah, we were at a workup with all the battle groups. So we integrate the ships with the carrier, the air wing with the carrier, and we start working. So we were doing an air-to-air defense to hone not only our skills, but those of the USS Princeton when they had been tracking them for 2 weeks. The problem was that there was never manned aircraft airborne when they were tracking them. And this was the first day. And unfortunately, we were the ones airborne and went and saw it.
Do you remember the weather that day? Was it cloudy or windy or anything out of the ordinary on the Pacific coast?
It was actually, if you're familiar with San Diego, it was a perfect day.
Real quick, I'm doing a poll where I'm saying, I want to know if you guys, do you believe this is real? Real meaning, do you think that it's legitimately the interaction of non-human intelligence interacting with Earth? So when I say, do you think it's real? Not like counting, foreign nation technology, not counting anything of Earth origin. When I say, do you think it's real? Do you think it's some kind of non-human intelligence occurrence happening here. So that's what the poll is. So I'm going to have yes, no, or I don't know. So I'm going to run that poll and see what you guys think. I'm curious.
Light winds, no white caps, clear skies, not a cloud. It was, for flying, it was the best.
Now, is it true that you saw, in your words, a 40-foot flying tic-tac-shaped object?
That's correct. Or for some people that can't know what a tic-tac is, it's a giant flying propane tank.
Fair enough. Did this object come up on radar or interfere with your radar or the USS Princeton?
The Princeton tracked it, the Nimitz tracked it, the E-2 tracked it. We never saw it on our radars. Our fire control radars never picked it up. The other airplane that took the video did get it on a radar. As soon as it tried to lock it, it jammed the radar, spit the lock, and he rapidly switched over to the targeting pod, which you can do in the F-18.
From what you saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential thermal scans from your aircraft?
No, there's none. There's no IR plume coming out. And Chad, who took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visible signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal exhaust?
No.
Can you describe how the aircraft maneuvered?
Abruptly, very determinate. It knew exactly what it was doing. It was aware of our presence, and it had acceleration rates. I mean, it went from 0 to matching our speed in no time at all.
Now, if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do these maneuvers that you saw, would it be capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
And just to confirm, this object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Now, was the aircraft that you were flying, was it armed?
No, never felt threatened at all.
If the aircraft was armed, do you believe that your aircraft or any aircraft in possession of the United States could have shot the Tic Tac down?
I'd say no. Just on the performance, it would just left in a split second.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
In your belief, is this flying Tic Tac, I mean, is it capable of being the product of any other nation on the Earth?
No, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists that have done calculations, which is beyond anything that we have.
Well, either the United States has an adversary here in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, it's been said it's probably the most credible UFO sighting in history based on all the sensors that were tracking it, and then for us to get visual and to go against the naysayers that it's something on the screen or whatever. I mean, there's 4 sets of human eyeballs. We're all very credible. Of the 6 of us that were involved in the thing, including the video, every one of us is going to do 20-plus years in the military in very responsible positions. So I'd say the world needs to know that.
It's a very, very, very
It's not a joke.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony here today for all of you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Olis.
Hey, Roger, thanks for the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and the courage it took to come forward and again, the sacrifice that each of you have made.
My opinion?
I serve on the National Security Subcommittee
I'm still weighing. I'm still
Committee, so I really want to
contemplating.
stay in the national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, we probe their capabilities. We look for weaknesses, and we collect that data, that reconnaissance for in the event we need it in the future. For each of you, yes or no question, based off of your own experience or the data that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information? Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Grusch?
Fair assessment, yeah.
Mr. Fravor.
Very possible.
Again,
Yeah, so that's also, according to them, according to their opinion, it's very possible that this could be some kind of reconnaissance mission, gathering of information, whatever you want to call it.
in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Grusch?
Yes.
Fravor?
Definitely.
Is it possible that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems?
Yes.
Yes.
Possible.
Do you feel, based off of your experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States? Mr. Graves?
Potentially.
Yes, sir, potentially.
Same answer, potentially.
Yeah, I'd say
Fravor.
definitely, potentially.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, in the event that your encounters have become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Is, based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any indication that the Department of Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that in a public setting.
And could you do it in a secure setting?
Now, you know what I do find interesting? They're saying that it's possible that they could be interested in our nuclear capabilities. Now, I think there's a couple things going on here. If this is real, there is, of course, the idea that these could be hostile, non-human intelligences that want to know our capabilities. Like, how advanced is our weaponry, which is why they might be interested in nuclear weaponry, which is what they're discussing. They're just talking about. But there's also the idea, let's say, because in my opinion, okay, so you have different levels of intelligences. You have the level that humanity is at, then you have higher dimensional beings, and then you have something in between. The somethings in between would perhaps be the ones that would be interested in like physical war, like physically attacking, and be interested in our nuclear capabilities, etc. In my opinion, the higher dimensional beings wouldn't be interested in such a thing because they would be more interested in either helping us evolve, or if they were, more negative entities, attempting to get us on their wavelength. So I feel like there would be less of some kind of physical confrontation or something like that. However, there would still be possibly an interest in nuclear capabilities because the development of nuclear capacity is actually very important because it is so in the Neogenian system, these are called cataclysmic events or cataclysms. So a cataclysm and the development of a technology that could trigger an extinction event. Humans could go extinct, or modern civilization could collapse, at least from nuclear weaponry. In nuclear weaponry, or whatever you want to call it, the development of technology that could trigger an extinction event is a trigger, cataclysmic event, a signal that forces humanity to either reach the next stage of evolution, which is planetary civilization, or collapse. Because if humanity doesn't reach the next stage in some way or another, it can reach it in a negative way or a positive way, through coerced enslavement in a negative hierarchical system, or through collective growth and interconnectedness of our acknowledgement of our unity. But if evolution doesn't happen one way or another, we will destroy ourselves either by nuclear weaponry or not coming together on other cataclysmic events that require planetary cooperation, like global warming or global pandemics or, different things like this. There are certain things like nuclear war being a huge example of a cataclysm that requires planetary cooperation. So it requires another stage of evolution to be able to overcome it. If not, it'll trigger, and see, this is basically like, it's sort of like, pushing the bird out of the nest. Either you're going to learn to fly or not. This is like, okay, humanity, you have this problem. Either you're going to evolve to the next level or you're going to be effed. You're going to destroy yourselves. So this requires either the leveling up of consciousness or the collapse of modern civilization. And then so we'll start again and we'll have another chance at trying to get to that level. But we'll have to start all over again, either through pockets of humans that have survived or through evolution occurring again and eventually an avatar that develops self-awareness, or the whole planet could be inhabitable and the whole planet would be a failure. That would be like a seed that doesn't sprout. It would be a dud. It would be a failure, because the whole purpose of a planet is like a seed that eventually the bloom of the planet is a sub-network mind that can establish its own collective frequency domain, or CFD. So what I'm saying is, if these are, let's say, higher beings, there could be an interest in nuclear capabilities for gauging what level of cataclysm we're close to, what our power level is regarding our ability to cause our own extinction, etc. So what I mean by, I guess my point is that it depends what level of entity we're dealing with. If it's a level of entity that's a little higher than us, then yeah, it could be for purposes of war. But if it's a higher dimensional being, the interest in nuclear weapons, in my opinion, would be for gauging where we are at in that cataclysmic event, because they would be directly interested in our evolution of consciousness, not that's where their interest lies, in our level of consciousness. And something like nuclear weaponry, it's good/bad. I mean, there's nothing really. The only quote unquote good thing about it is that it forces humanity to be like, you either have to evolve or collapse. You either come the cataclysm or succumb to the cataclysm. There will be other cataclysmic events in other stages, such as asymptotic burnout, which is a likely candidate for the cataclysmic event that stands between us and Holos independence. But that's far down the road. I've talked about that in other videos. What we face right now are things like nuclear war, global pandemics, global war, anything that threatens us globally and requires global cooperation to overcome, because it requires us to have that global mindset and start to develop that structure in the psyche, the analog all, that starts to model reality as a unity in a holistic system, not as disparate, individual, isolated systems, which we are not isolated systems. We are an interconnected, holistic system. Hey, Bumtastic, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. So my point being is that it's interesting to think about, again, if this is real, what sort of thing are we dealing with here? Are we really, first of all, are they even interested in, they're just speculating this could be the case, but if it could be the case, it could be to gauge what level we're at with regard to, our capabilities of self-extinction. Basically meaning, if this is a high interdimensional being, they're not worried about us being able to nuke them. They want to see our capability of nuking ourselves. It's kind of like if you're examining an ant colony, you're not worried about the ants being able to attack you. You're checking them out to see how they're doing and if they're going to destroy themselves or not. Ants don't have little ant nukes, but By the way, was it last weekend that Barbie and Oppenheimer both came out at the same time? And it's this real phenomenon. And I've been thinking about doing a video on it, but I just haven't had the time. And in my opinion, the reason why there's such interest in this. I think it was like historic box office numbers or something. I don't remember. It's a big deal. But I think that this sort of juxtaposition, it really shows where we are at as humanity, in that we kind of live in this Barbie fake. And I haven't seen these movies, by the way. Okay, so I just to be clear, I haven't seen these movies. But the reason why I feel like there's such interest in this sort of diametrically opposed, juxtaposed, but there's such an interest in both, is because I think it reflects where we are at in a society where we live in sort of this fake happy Barbie world, but we're also on the cusp of like nuclear war and global collapse and destruction, and everyone's walking around with like, oh, hey, we're all, let's go to the beach and look, I just got my nails done, or let's go watch this new TV show, or let's, have a party, let's go drinking, let's blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, nations have nuclear arms all pointed at each other. People are, killing each other in different nations, and starvation and just absolute madness that is hard to even fathom is occurring. Beneath this plastic pink sheen, there's this world of chaos and destruction and death. And in my opinion, that is why there is such interest in sort of both of these simultaneously as a package, because it really highlights and reflects where we are at humanity as a psyche. Carl Jung looked at myth as being a projection of the collective consciousness and the collective unconscious at the time. Like the myths, the stories represented where society was as a collective. And so these are our new myths. And these are our new stories in the form of movies. I mean, I know one is based on a true story, but as far as movies go, they are projections of the psyche and projections of where we are collectively. And this is kind of where we're at. We're in this fake happy world where everyone's trying to ignore the fact that behind the shiny veneer is death and destruction. Anyway, I digress. And just a disclaimer as well, I haven't seen either of these movies. But from the trailers and whatnot, that's the I want to see both of them, by the way. I really do. Anyway, let's watch this.
Yes, Mr. Favor.
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility.
Real quick, I want to say, Mark says, if some super intelligent aliens are around, we'd better hope they're staging an intervention that saves us from ourselves. And that's a funny comment, and it's kind of true. But what's interesting is, this is kind of discussed in the Law of One. And remember, we don't know if the Law of One is real or not. It could be all made up. But the concepts in it are really interesting, and I think reflect accurately some underlying patterns. Whether the particulars are real or not, I think some of the universal patterns are reflective of how reality is. And one of the reasons that it is given that these entities don't interfere is because of what they call the law of free will. And basically what this means is, if they were to interfere, we wouldn't raise our consciousness. It would interfere with our evolution, basically. Like, the whole point is for us to get to the point where we realize that we have to work together. If a non-human intelligence stopped us from destroying ourselves, we wouldn't raise to the next level of consciousness, because it takes it's internal work that we have to do. We have to get there. And I totally understand that, because like with my channel, I constantly say on my channel, like all the different videos that I do and all the information I bring forward, I always say, don't believe me just because I'm saying it. Use this as catalysts to realize that you should go and do your own internal work now, because just believing something that someone says doesn't raise your consciousness. You have to do the work yourself. So anyway, I think it's really interesting that idea of, well, interference would kind of defeat the purpose of humans learning and being able to reach the next stage of consciousness. Anyway, another interesting thing to point out.
To go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have
I just want to rewind that. Rewind? Does anyone say rewind anymore? do people say rewind? Or what did they say? Go back? Or do you just say... Anyway, I think this is important. For one, how serious this guy is being, who's speaking right now. It shows that, hey, whether this is non-human intelligence or not, like regardless, this is extremely, like the evidence says this needs to be looked at seriously. And once again, we don't know for sure. We always have to be skeptical. We always have to be skeptical. But the evidence says, look at this closely. Something is going on here that could be very important.
And a secure setting?
Yes.
Mr. Favor.
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility to maintain oversight and be aware of these activities so that, if appropriate, we take action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular Mr. Grusch, talk to us in a skiff. And if that access is denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress.
Yeah, this guy is not taking any shit.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield the remainder of my time to my fellow colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ogles, for the great questions, brother. Mr. Grusch, I might have asked this before, but I want to make sure. Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's possibly been injured working on legacy UAP reverse engineering?
Yes.
Okay. How were they injured? Is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people talk about Havana syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
How do you think we ought to handle UAP whistleblower complaints like yours in the future?
Yeah, there was some issue with mine. So, PPD-19 process, it goes to the Intel committees, either through PPD-19 or ICD-120. There's not a good way for the Intelligence Community Inspector General to provide that to other committees. And I asked my information to be sent to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee because there are Title X equities at play, but there was no smooth process.
Yeah, real quick, I want to mention something real quick. So Taylor Made makes a good point. Says, I don't really get the message of meditation. I've been going on with meditation. It's been going on with meditation for millennia. Yeah, so this idea about, meditation is what we need to evolve. No, it's not. Meditation can be helpful, but this is why in our system, in the Neogenian, to reach hyper-awareness, we have 3 tools: metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. Meditation plays one part of phenomenological experience. It's one aspect of a triadic way of reaching it. So yeah, you're right. Just sitting around and meditating, like that can be helpful. It's not bad, and some people can get to higher understandings of existence through that. But obviously, everyone sitting around and meditating isn't going to solve the world's problems, and we're not all going to suddenly reach higher consciousness because of it. That's just one aspect of 3 tools necessary to reach it. So metacognition is thought thinking about itself, self-thinking thought. So higher and higher levels of metacognition allow one to reach higher levels of consciousness. So it's thought that reflects upon itself. So this requires high levels of examining concepts. And this essentially involves our system of meta-rationalism, which is understanding the frequency nature of reality. So it's about, a lot of it is about, like, philosophy engages in metacognition a lot. So high levels of reflection on concepts. And concept networking is about taking that and forming it into a holistic pattern. And so it's about taking disparate subjects and putting together to form a whole. And this is what starts to develop the analog all, the structure of the psyche necessary for all awareness and eventually hyper-awareness. So it's about engaging in understanding certain concepts and putting these concepts together to form a conceptual model of reality that accurately reflects reality. And the great way to understand concept networking is the story of the blind men and the elephant. I think it's a story that was told in India, I believe, where you have, so imagine 5 blind men, or just a group of 5, or just a group of blind men who approach an elephant, and they've never seen an elephant before. They have no idea what an elephant is. No one's ever told them about it. They have no idea what it is, right? So they're blind, have no idea what an elephant is. So they want to go to this object and figure out what it is. So one of them feels the leg and goes, oh, an elephant is like a tree, because it's feeling the girthy leg. The other one feels the tail and goes, oh, no, an elephant, it's like a rope. The other one feels the trunk and goes, no, it's like a snake. And then another one feels the ear and goes, no, you're all wrong. It's like a blanket. So they're all, and another one feels the side and goes, no, it's like a wall. So they're all arguing. One's like, no, it's a tree. No, it's like a wall. No, it's like a snake. No, it's like a rope. No, it's like a blanket. And they're all feeling, and they're all think that the other one is wrong, when really they're all just seeing different pieces of a whole. So the aspect of concept networking is looking at all reality, all aspects of reality: physics, science, mathematics, philosophy, art, music, sex, love, every aspect, every single aspect of reality, and seeing how it all fits together to form a unified whole, a unified pattern. That's what concept networking is. So these elements, metacognition, thought thinking upon itself in higher and higher levels, and then engaging in concept networking, putting together a model of reality through understanding all the different facets and seeing how they connect together, and then phenomenological experience. You don't have to do it in a certain order, but phenomenological experience is then the experience of knowing what it is like to be all reality. It's about, once you start to understand what reality is, it's about the subjective experience of knowing and feeling what it is like to be the absolute. And that's where things like meditation can come into play, where you start to have a direct experience of feeling what it is like to be all reality. But that on its own isn't going to do it. You need all these other elements, but these other elements are hard. Metacognition, concept networking, it's very difficult. And that's why people don't like to do it, but they're not even aware that's what they need to do. That's why in our system, in the Neogenian, we give people these tools. So it's like, hey, look, we can't tell you anything that will just automatically raise your consciousness. Here are the tools though. And if you decide to use them, you can possibly do it yourself, because it's not something that can be forced or done. But anyway, I wanted to just mention, you're absolutely right, Taylor. There's a lot of people and spiritualists and new age gurus out there that are like, oh yeah, everyone just needs to meditate. No, like, meditation is helpful. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with meditation. Great. But that's not it. That's one piece, one piece, and it's not going to do it on its own. We need a lot more than that, and we need people to start taking this seriously. And some people have taken it seriously, like Richard Buck. Richard Buck was a psychologist who wrote a book called Cosmic Consciousness, that as a psychologist, he was like, some people in humanity are literally developing a new form of consciousness, which Richard Buck called cosmic consciousness. And so this isn't any kind of like new age woo-woo fairy tale BS. This is a very real phenomenon that is about creating a new structure in the psyche called the analog all, which is, we have the analog I, and those who reach hyper-awareness have an analog all. And this isn't also like theory. This is something that I have, and I know people who do. I know a lot of Neogenians that are at that level. So again, I've had some people go in the comments, but like, is this just theory? No, this isn't theory. This is where I and many of the people involved here are at, and we want to help everyone get there. It's nothing. It's not like some weird superiority thing or anything like that. It's just like, We want everyone to be able to understand that we're all connected and interconnected and part of a holistic system, and that we're all in this together, so we can start having a beautiful new world, because that's what we need. We can start, instead of hating each other for our differences, we can start celebrating our diversity and be like, ooh, let's learn from each other. Because that's the whole thing. With just self-awareness and only self-awareness, we have a survival mindset where it's like, oh, the other is a threat to my existence. So I see everything that is different from me as being strange and weird. It's a threat. That's what comes with just having an analog I or an ego. And that was helpful. It's what allowed us to survive. But we don't need to be in the survival phase anymore. Now we can move to the thriving phase, which incorporates the development of the analog all, which no longer sees other as threat, but sees other as a reflection. Oh, you are a reflection of us as the absolute, experiencing ourselves. We're all in this together. Let's help each other out. Let's learn from each other. Let's grow together. Let's create a beautiful world together. And you don't lose your individuality. You just gain something more. It's kind of like, you have, some creatures that are just instinctual and are all based on like pleasure and pain and fighting. And then you have other animals like cats and dogs that also have emotions. They can feel love and sadness. They don't lose the ability to feel things, but they gain a new spectrum of qualitative experience. And then you have humans who develop self-awareness. They don't lose their ability to feel pleasure and pain and sensory input, and they don't lose their emotions, but they gain self-awareness. So when you reach all awareness, or eventually hyper-awareness, it's not like you lose your individuality, you just gain the ability to understand and see and experience reality as an interconnected whole. And so you don't go, oh, you're a threat to my survival. You go, oh, you're a reflection of me. Let's learn and grow and form a network together. And eventually we start forming networks that are so unified. And by the way, the development of social media is the underlying framework for that developing network, this ability to share information. Like, look, we're doing it right now. We're doing it. See, this is a frustrating thing that people don't realize. It's happening right now. Like, I'm through us, through me, through us, through all of us, communicating with each other through mediums like this, like social media. We are the network communicating with itself. Like, you are communicating to yourself when you watch me communicating to you, and I'm communicating to myself when I watch someone else communicating information like this to me. It's a feedback loop that we are feeding into the collective consciousness of, hey, wake up, self. We are all trying to get ourselves to wake up to the fact that we are the absolute. And when you realize that you're the absolute becomes more conscious, because you are the consciousness of the absolute. And we're all starting to get our awareness to this level. Now, higher dimensional entities, they know this already. Just like we are self-aware and cats and dogs aren't, higher dimensional beings are, of course, aware of this. And they're so aware of this that they're so synchronized that they act as a subnetwork mind and exist in their own dimensions and don't even require the physicality anymore. So we are at that level where we are trying to get ourselves to wake up through information being shared through technology. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and which is why you need to, which is why what I try and do with my channel and my work in general is bring all this information together in one place and do my best to show what is bullshit, what is true, and what is worth looking into. Maybe not. Stuff for sure, like, okay, for sure this is bullshit, or for sure this is true, or this requires more investigation. Things like this being a mental reality, a reality of mind. Like, we know this is true. Things like the law of one or whatever. We go, we don't know, but it's worth looking into. And then things that we know for sure are bullshit, like the earth being flat and the moon being hollow, and all the number of crazy, insane stuff that a lot of New Agers and spiritualists are pushing. I'm releasing a video. I don't want to get into it, but I'm going to be clearing up some misconceptions. I see a lot of prominent spiritualists and gurus they have millions of followers or whatever, and they're just outright saying things that are just outright, either they're lying or they've done zero research, because it's just absurd. It's not to say that everything they say is wrong. Some of the stuff they say in there is good, but they also mix it in with stuff that's like, I don't know if you're just lying and doing this for the views or you've literally done no research. So what I'm saying is, this is where metacognition is. Remember where I said metacognition? Metacognition is what examines things critically. It doesn't just go, oh, I'm hearing this and I'm believing it. Oh, I'm hearing this and I'm believing it. I'm believing it because this spiritual guru with 1 million followers told me this certain document was written 36,000 years ago, and I believe it just because. No, it goes, huh, you know, I'm getting this information. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to examine it. I'm going to do research on this. I'm going to see if it makes sense with what I know about how reality works. I'm going to see if it connects with other things. I'm going to see that's where metacognition comes in. Meditation's not going to do that. You see? And then you also need concept networking. You need all these elements together to create a model of reality that is clear and consistent and as close to reality as we can possibly get. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
It's a trash can. Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Personally, yes.
Do you know any that would be willing to testify if there were protections?
That's interesting. I want to hear him say that one more time.
Those that are participating in reverse engineering.
Play, but there was no smooth process to do so. Yeah.
It's a trash can. Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Yeah, so I think he's asking, are you aware of any people involved in programs that are about reverse engineering? He says non-terrestrial, so I'm assuming he's meaning extraterrestrial. I don't know. Craft. So interesting. That's interesting.
Personally, yes.
And he says personally, yes.
You know,
they need to get this guy. If he's not in some confidential conference room talking to people right now, like that's bullshit. Like they need to be checking out everything this guy has to say, because it's pretty important stuff. Like how slow bureaucracy works is ridiculous. And before, you know, someone might throw him out a 5-story window or something. I guess 5 stories isn't that tall, is it? Let's go 20 stories. I mean, 5 stories is pretty high, but it's not. You could probably still survive 5 stories. So let's say. Anyway, they need to talk to this guy.
Willing to testify if there were protections for them?
Certainly closed door and assurances that breaking their NDA, they're not going to get administratively punished for so. Yeah.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're going to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here. We're going to give 3 people a chance at an additional 3 minutes. So Mr. Burchett, do you want to keep going?
Why don't you come back to me, Mr. Chairman? Ms. Luna, if she's on, is she on that list?
Sure.
Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record an article by News Nation, and it follows Mr. Grusch's full interview for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Grusch.
Hey, Chungus Khan, thank you for the super chat. It says, here's to our ascension into conscious. Thank you. Thank you for the support.
Why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of
so we heard this part,
life?
But
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be,
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
Yeah, you're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article, also Situation 2, which is in the previously classified NSA archive. What I would recommend, and I tried to get access, but I got a wall of silence at the White House, was those specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to a further investigation using those publicly available information.
Thank you. And then my last question with 51 seconds remaining. You mentioned white-collar crimes potentially being taking place in regards to a cover-up. Can you please elaborate?
I have concerns based on the interviews I conducted under my official duties of potential violations of the federal acquisition regulations, the FAR.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Raskin for 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I thank the witnesses for their endurance and service today. Mr. Fravor, you've described your episode in detail now, and you call it the most credible UFO sighting in history. But I wonder, was this the first time that you encountered a UFO or a UAP in 2004?
Yes.
And what was your general attitude or perspective on the UFO discussion before that happened?
I never felt that we were alone with all the planets out there, but I wasn't a UFO person. I wasn't watching History Channel and MUFON and all that.
And have you
He's cute. I like him.
had experiences or encounters since that happened?
No.
And so have you formed any general conclusions about what you think you experienced then?
Yes. I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years.
Very good. Mr. Grusch, you've been able to answer in great detail on certain questions, and then other things you say you're not able to respond to. Can you just explain where you're drawing the line and what's the basis for that?
Yeah, based on my DOPSR security review and what they've determined that is unclassified.
I see. So you're answering any questions that just call upon your knowledge of unclassified questions, but anything that relates to classified matters you're not commenting on in this context?
In an open session, but happy to participate in a closed session at the right level, yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Graves, you've said that there are dozens of fellow pilots, military pilots. Are there also commercial pilots who've encountered the same kind of sightings that you described before?
They are similar. Commercial pilots have less range and less sensors to be able to reach out and look for objects over wide swaths of airspace. And so pilots are seeing them, commercial pilots are seeing them, and they're typically closer, and the range of what they're seeing is pretty large.
Well, what is the most vivid, concrete sighting with the naked eye of the objects that you described before, the cube-like objects?
Certainly. I think the most vivid sighting of that would have been near midair that we had at the entrance to our working area. One of these objects was completely stationary at the exact entrance to our working areas, not only geographically but also at altitude. So it was right where all the jets are going, essentially, on the eastern seaboard. The two aircraft flew within about 50 feet of the object, and that was a very close visual sighting.
And you were in one of the aircraft?
I was not. I was there when the pilot landed. He canceled the mission after, and I was there. He was in the ready room with all his gear on, with his mouth open, and I asked him what the problem was, and he said he almost hit one of those darn things.
He said he was 50 feet away from it?
Yes, sir.
And his description of the object was consistent with the description you gave us before?
A dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
Inside of a
It's interesting. A black cube inside of a clear sphere.
And his description of the object was consistent with the description you gave us before?
A dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
Inside of a clear sphere?
Yes.
And with no self-evident propulsion system?
No wings, no IR energy coming off of the vehicle, nothing tethering it to the ground. And that was primarily what we were experiencing out there.
I'm over time. Thank you very much for your service, and I yield back to Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for all three of y'all, starting with Mr. Graves. Why did you come forward on this issue?
I came forward because I felt that my colleagues did not have a way to mitigate this safety threat, and I wanted to help them. I was trained as an aviation safety officer by the Navy, and this seemed, it just felt right. I felt like I had to help the folks that were still flying and dealing with this.
Mr. Grusch.
Purely a sense of duty. I first swore an oath when I was a cadet 18 years ago, and I still uphold that even out of the uniform.
Commander.
I was pestered by a friend, and I asked why, and he said, you're the one person that they can't discredit, and you'll add credibility to the New York Times article. And so after about 6 times, I said, okay.
Yeah.
I like him.
This town isn't made, unfortunately, by people like y'all. We thank y'all. And I do want to also thank the people in the audience and the people that are watching this. It can't be people all over the world that have kept this issue alive. You've endured criticism and derogatory remarks, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And so God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much. We really appreciate you guys and gals. That's why we need term limits. Y'all keep clapping, us politicians just keep talking. So let me ask y'all, how can the public contribute to UAP reporting, and what avenues you think are available to the public to report these sightings?
So I think the thing to see, like I was talking earlier, one thing to remain skeptical about all this stuff, but realize that there is some very good evidence here, and it deserves investigating. And so I think the thing to think about here is first of all, is this real? Is it not? If it is real, if it is, that's incredible. And if it's real, it's then to determine, okay, would these be entities that are a bit higher than us, and so are a little more along the lines of how Hollywood might depict aliens? Or are we talking about higher beings? Are we talking about interdimensional beings? Or maybe perhaps not even interdimensional beings, but beings that are just beyond what we would typically, what Hollywood typically depicts aliens. And I think that what we would probably end up encountering is I don't think it would be a Hollywood type depiction. I think most people think, imagine it as being a Hollywood type depiction. I would doubt that would be the case, but you never know. Like, again, it must be open. But this, I am particularly interested in his discussion about the holographic principle, in his discussion about it possible being interdimensional beings, and him referring it to as non-human intelligence, to keep an open mind as to what these things could be. And I think that is key. And I would like to see, I know this came out yesterday, but I would really like to see more discussion around that. Regardless, this is very, very interesting information. And regardless, we are all eternal minds, eternal beings on this path of evolution, on this path of transformation, and we are trying to get humanity to reach that higher level of collective consciousness. And I think that what we are seeing here is something that needs to be taken seriously and looked at and considered, and see what happens. And I will be very, very, very interested to see what occurs once they get that individual in a confidential setting and he can discuss things more openly, which I sure hope he's doing right now. Like, they should be doing this ASAP. So what I'm going to do, I think, now is I'm going to hang out in the comments for just a little bit. But then I know it's very, very late, but we still have a members only meeting and a members only stream. And so we're going to do that. we are going to do that. We're still going to do that because we basically watched, I'd say half of this. There's still a lot more. So we'll do a members only, and we're going to watch a little more of this because there's actually parts of this that I haven't seen yet. The parts that I showed all of you are all parts that I have seen, but I've only seen half of it just because I've been very, very busy. I was watching some of this as I was doing work and writing and stuff like this. So there's still part of it that I haven't seen. I don't know if we'll watch all of that, but we're going to watch some of the stuff that I haven't seen yet because I'm really interested to see, what else is there, because everything I have seen is very intriguing, very interesting. So, no, excuse me, that's what we're going to do in the members only, which we're going to do in just a few minutes here. And that is for anyone who is a Patreon member at any tier or tier 2 or higher on YouTube. But I'm going to hang out in the chat here for just a few more minutes because I want to see what you guys have to say. And by the way, please hit like if you haven't so that we can get more people seeing this kind of stuff. And I have some shout outs. Oh, some shout outs I missed. Okay, thank you to Thomas Kalpaka for the super chat who said Barbie was better than I thought. It's a lot about self-evolution and becoming more self-aware. I was not expecting a lot, but that wasn't the worst movie, surprisingly. No, I want to see it. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I want to see it. I haven't seen it yet. Jacob, thank you for the super chat. Says, here's a good one. If malevolent intelligences had already interfered with us, would benevolent intelligences then allow themselves to help balance out what happened? You know, that's an interesting question. And, that's probably something we'll be talking about as we explore the Law of One. Like I said, if you found this interesting, be here Monday. Because on Monday, we are going to be reading from the Law of One, where they specifically talk about negative entities called the Orion Group and their craft. And some of their the descriptions of their craft sounds kind of similar. And they talk about these crafts being controlled by thought. It's interesting. Again, I always want to say this. We don't know if this stuff is real or not, but it's interesting to look at and sparks discussion, especially with how we know reality operates and speculation about how it could operate within our theoretical framework in the Neogenian and meta-rationalism. So, but to your question, so the Law of One actually talks about that. So according to the Law of One, Earth is kind of quarantined by positive entities, that positive entities kind of quarantine Earth in a certain way. I don't know if it's energetically or what, but or if it's like on the level of mind to keep negative entities out. But they say that occasionally negative entities can breach this. So you were saying if malevolent beings had already interfered with us, would benevolent intelligence allow them to help balance out what happened? Well, according to, so we'll get into this, okay? Probably next week. And again, Law of One is all speculation, but according to Law of One, it is that what these Orion entities try to do is get humanity basically on their wavelength by disseminating negative philosophy. They're not trying to come and conquer humanity physically. They're trying to get humanity on their own wavelength. Whereas the positive entities are kind of trying to do the same thing. They're trying to get humanity on their wavelength as well, which is what, an example would be, like the Law of One, that dissemination of that information. And so what it really wouldn't be this sort of like War of the Worlds type of scenario unless we're dealing with a different type of entity, unless we're dealing with, entities who actually do want to have like some sort of physical conquest. And they do talk about physical conquest, but I can't remember what they had a reason. And I just can't remember what it was right now for why it's a gamble. But we'll talk about that on Monday, most likely. Roger Forsyth, thank you for gifting a membership. And Bumtastic, thank you for the 2 super chats. Bumtastic says, could this be a preparation for Project Bluebeam? I mean, yes, I believe there are ETs, but I do believe this could be a setup. I love this. Oh, and I'm sorry, that was Bumtastic who said that. And then Evan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Says, I love this topic so much. Thanks, Morgue. You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Steffi, thank you so much for being a member for 11 months. Let me put Bumtastic's name up on the board real quick. Or no, I'm sorry. Not Bumtastic. That's Roger Forsyth. Hey, Keegan, thank you for the stars. Thank you, Keegan. Let me see if I missed some shout outs here. Tia Wallace, thank you for the stars. Jennifer Andrus, Eli Carter, Nadja Fields, Amber Benet, Edgar Allan Wick. Thank you all for the stars. And like I said, please hit like if you haven't already so we can get this information out there. Let me see. Thank you to Manuel Villa. Thank you to Manuel Villa, who became a member on Patreon. So you'll be able to be a part of our members only stream that we're going to do in just a few minutes here, where we're going to get into the parts of the interview that I haven't seen yet. And I'm curious, obviously, I'm curious to see the parts I haven't seen yet. Thank you, Manuel. DB, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. What's my take on CERN? Yeah, so CERN is basically, it's a Large Hadron Collider. And CERN, there's all these conspiracy theories around CERN. Look, CERN is not a big deal. CERN is very primitive. What CERN is they're just bashing particles together. I mean, that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but it's still based on materialist science. So CERN is a very primitive way of looking at reality and trying to explain reality because it's not getting to the metaphysical. CERN is sort of the equivalent of smashing rocks together and seeing what happens. It's very primitive. They're just smashing particles, not just, I mean, there's more to it than that, but simplistically explained, they're smashing particles together and watching the trajectory of particles to try and learn more about particle behavior. And try and, see the properties of fundamental particles. And then, like I said, there's more to it than that. But in a nutshell, the LHC, or Large Hadron Collider, it's still operating under the assumption that reality is material. And so it's honestly not that interesting. It's not this big conspiracy theory that a lot of people think, in my opinion, anyway. Taylor May, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. It says Nuremberg, Germany has a newspaper of a woodcut that shows UFOs fighting over a city. That's interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for the support, as always, Taylor. I appreciate your question earlier, by the way. It was a good one about meditation. Sinful Lee, thank you for gifting a membership. That's so nice. So here you are. We shall square you. And by the way, if you are new here, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And if anything that I said interested you, please check out my other videos. We want to do some important stuff here. We are literally here to have humanity enter a new phase of existence. That's why we are called The New Beginning. So check out my videos. Check out what we talk about. It's important stuff. Humanity really is on that cusp of a new world and a new beginning. But like I said, like I talked about earlier, it could be a failure to launch and it could destroy itself, or you could have bad people that coerce an enslaved situation where we are in a negative hierarchy and have a slave society. And I talked a lot about, I want to be clear here that our system, the Neo-Genian, is based on meta-rationalist principles. So we are meta-rationalists in that we understand reality to be reason, rational, that metaphysics can be understood rationally, that reason should be self-critical and critical of itself, and that The point being that this isn't, I know it's hard to discern because out there's a lot of weird spiritual stuff and new age gurus that spout a lot of nonsense. We're not about that. We're about seriously studying this new development in humanity, which is a new structure of the psyche, and understanding the metaphysical nature of reality rationally. That is, implementing an entirely new science, which materialist science will replace, or materialist science will just become a subset of it. So I just want to point this out there. We talk about some things in a speculative way, like Law of One is very speculative. That's not something that's like a cornerstone or anything. That's just speculative material. We talk about a lot of speculative material. We talk about a lot of myths and legends and things that we can learn from. But at the core of what we do as the Neogenian is we are a system that approaches things through a lens of logic and reason, synthesized with intuition. We are rationalists. We are intuitives. We're ultimately meta-rationalists. So I just want to point that out there. If you're new, check out my videos. Check out what we're about. It's important stuff. Twilight. Thank you to Twilight for becoming a member. I appreciate it. So that's... And thank you to Athox Oraculus for gifting a membership. Are you up here already? Yes, thank you. So we shall square you. And then Bumtastic, thank you for gifting a membership. And Evan Wright, oh wow, and thank Evan Wright. All of you guys, thank you for gifting a membership. Is Evan up here? I thought you were. Are you not? Oh, you're up here. So that was one membership. And then Bumtastic. Can you see all the way down here? I'm running out of space. No, you can't really. So I'll put you, I'm gonna put running out of space. I had to split your name in two because I'm running out of room up here. Oh, and thank you for the super chat. Bumtastic says, with meditation, though, I find it helpful, but I find sexual alchemy and fasting physical urges help to bring your energy up and more awareness to the subconscious. All these sort of things are in the realm of phenomenological experience, and might be helpful to some, might be not be helpful to others. Things like that, you know, when it comes to fasting or whatnot, always consult with your doctor. Don't do anything dangerous. But yeah, there are various mental exercises that one can do that allows one to have phenomenological experiences of the mind, of the collective unconscious, of reality. So they can be very, very helpful. And there are a critical piece, but it's a triadic process. I have so many damn markers now. They keep falling off. Do dreams influence the future in a personal way? No. Dreams only influence the future if you alter what you're going to do because of your dreams. No, dreams don't alter the future. Dreams are a projection of your unconscious or the collective unconscious. So they don't alter the future. But dreams are very important because they give you a glimpse into your own mind, your own psyche, your own structure. And so it's important for the process of integration or inner star actualization. Oh, okay. So just to be clear, all right, I want to say one more time. So in just a few minutes, probably, I don't know. It's hard to say because it just depends what kind of, if I get questions or things. We're going to be doing the members only stream. So I just want to be clear. So how to access that, where we're going to watch portions of the video that I haven't seen yet. in the members only stream. You can access that by joining any tier on Patreon. And if you choose all the cheapest options on Patreon, it's $5 a month. If you choose all the cheapest options. So any tier on Patreon or tier 2 or higher on YouTube. So either of those will allow you to watch the members only stream that we're going to have in a few minutes. If you sign up on Patreon, it's just right there, the latest in my feed. And if you're tier 2 or higher on YouTube, it's on the community tab or the members tab on my channel. Nice. Keegan says, I'll be there. It'll be my first members only stream. I joined last time I watched you. Nice. Okay. Are you guys ready for that? It's pretty late. I think we should do it. It's just such an awesome topic. That this went on for a really long time. But what are you guys thinking? Should we do the members only stream now? Brian, thank you for for being a member for 9 months. I appreciate it. Says, so glad you're back on TikTok. It's my new obsession. I vouched for you. Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Reminder, my TikTok is now back. It was banned. It is no longer banned. So follow me on TikTok if you haven't. It's Morgue_official. So that's once again, Morgue_official. Check it out. And follow me over on TikTok. And I feel like I really should make a TikTok about this. I'm having a hard time finding time. Having a very hard time finding time. I need to make a TikTok about this, but I honestly don't know if I'll be able to. Yeah, I don't know, just because I'm so strapped for time. All right. Hey, Susan, I'm glad you liked it. Let us do the members only stream. We're going to do that right now. I'll put the link in the comments one more time if you want to be a part of that. Support on tier 2 or higher on YouTube, or support on Patreon at any tier. Shout out to everyone who does support. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much to Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Enki, Nusalina, Merlin, Paul Rogers III, and everyone else. Thank you to everyone who donated and supported today. And remember, if you can't support monetarily, don't feel bad, or if you just don't want to. I don't want anyone to ever feel pressured to support monetarily. Only do it if you feel good about it, if you can afford it. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking, subscribing. So always keep that in mind. Now, I do want to shout out our moderators. Our moderators are awesome. They are fantastic. Make sure you check them out because they have channels. And if you like what I talk about, you'll love what they talk about. You can check out Jan's channel. Jan's channel is called Jan Daemon, and they talk a lot about interesting topics. Maybe they'll talk about this. I don't know. I think that would be cool if they did, for sure. So go check out Jan's channel. Check them out. They have a great place where you can follow them and watch their videos. Check out Mark's channel. Mark has an awesome channel with ASMR and really good information with the ASMR that Mark creates. And check out the Neogenian Oculus. The Neogenian Oculus is a fantastic channel. If you want to know more about the Neogenian and what we're about, check out the Neogenian Oculus. Philip and Susan have links, or run that. And I think they are going live this Saturday, I want to say. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they are. So you want to be there for that. I have a new video coming out on Saturday. And remember, on Monday, we are doing the Law of One discussion on these crafts, which are very pertinent to what we have been discussing. So, let's see. I believe that is everything. All right, my friends, we are about to begin the members only stream where we're going to be watching parts of the video that I have not seen yet. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Until then, ad astra.